Fresh war of words over political reform. Investigation into space tourism rocket crash could take up to a year. And calls to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Hong Kong's Chief Secretary is dismissing suggestions from the Hong Kong Federation of Students and Occupy Central organizers to resolve the current political crisis as impractical. The proposals are also drawing criticism from some protesters. Owen Fung begins our coverage.
The Hong Kong Federation of Students, or HKFS, earlier suggested that lawmakers can resign to trigger a de facto referendum on the issue of political reform. Occupy Central organizer Benny Tai also recommended the chief executive dissolve the Legislative Council if the reform package fails to pass in the legislature and call new elections to resolve the current impasse. Today, Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam said she disagrees with these proposed solutions and criticized them as impractical. Lam said any activity carried out under the name of a referendum is not legally binding in the SAR and therefore would be a waste of public funds. The Chief Secretary also urged lawmakers to think twice before resigning, as voters had expected them to serve out their terms when electing them into the legislature. Benny Tai, however, disagrees with Lam.
But I think she might have to provide a feasible solution to the existing situation. And just saying that those proposals are not feasible, I think would not be constructive.
Meanwhile, Basic Law Committee member Maria Tam also dismissed Benny Tai's proposal. She said dissolving the legislature will not solve the problem. Tam maintained that the only way forward is to accept the central government's reform framework. Elsewhere, Executive Councillor Fanny Law criticized the students for ignoring the government's proposals while raising their demands. She stated that there must be compromise on both sides for dialogue to continue. But what do Occupy protesters think about de facto referendum?
It's a bit idealistic and too crazy, but why not?
I don't think that that is a quite a good idea. During that vacuum period, the pro-established parties may have a larger voice than those opposed them. So I think there might be some problem.
Some protesters in Admiralty also said while they welcome suggestions from student groups and Occupy Central organizers on how to advance the movement, they maintain that occupiers should be consulted before implementing any plans. Owen Fung, TVB News.
Well, the Alliance for Peace and Democracy says it has collected more than 1.5 million signatures in its latest petition against the Occupy movement. And there have been more demonstrations against the Occupy protests and organizer Benny Tai. More on that from Liz Yoon.
According to the Alliance for Peace and Democracy, the petition seeks to support our police, free our roads and restore law and order. The group's convener, Robert Chow, is happy with the number of signatures collected in the past 9 days, claiming it's a world record.
It's a record in anywhere. So I think Hong Kong people should be proud of themselves. They've done so in a very peaceful manner to tell the world that we are peaceful, we want democracy, we want freedom, and we want law and order. And I think whoever is still occupying the streets, defying public opinion, should be ashamed of themselves.
Addressing public doubts about the petition's credibility, Chow said the group has enhanced its identification process. He plans to submit the signatures to Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam tomorrow and outline further action to be taken by the alliance. Meanwhile, a group staged a slow drive protest this morning against the Occupy movement. A number of cross-border truck drivers made their way from Yuen Long to Sheung Shui. This driver said business at the company he works for has dropped by half since the occupation began. The demonstrators also say the blockade of roads has affected the transportation of goods to different parts of the city. And members of the group carrying Hong Kong Power rallied at the University of Hong Kong and handed in a petition. They called on the university's vice-chancellor to explain why teaching staff could take a month off and engage in unlawful activities. Occupy Central organizer Benny Tai teaches law at the university. Liz Yun, TVB News.
In other news tonight, the transport chief says more delays and cost overruns are inevitable on construction of the local section of the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Rail link. Anthony Zheng says the government will seek legal advice on who should pay for the additional cost. Diane To reports.
Two international experts engaged by the MTR Corporation have said the high-speed rail project has a 30% chance of further delay, and that the latest cost estimate of $71.5 billion would likely be exceeded. The railway company maintains confidence that the project can stay within the budget, but said it will need extra funding for contingencies, with the amount expected to be made known early next year.
We will come up with a number for government to consider, and that number would include a contingency fund, which doesn't mean that you have to spend the budget. It could be within the budget, or it could be over the budget, but we would try to be conservative.
Ma acknowledged it may be hard to get the additional funding approved by lawmakers, especially amid the current political climate, but denied the project is a financial black hole.
Well, our international experts have come up with a system which gives better control over the payment to contractors. On top of it, one has to give credit to MTRC over the many, many years that we have built so many rail that we are very competent. This sort of confidence, I hope, would cause LegCo to approve the funding.
Ma added the railway company is still waiting for the government to sort out the co-location of immigration and customs facilities of the mainland and the SAR at the West Kowloon terminus.
Because it affects the design of the terminal. If co-location will not be implemented by 2017. But we need a decision. We need, something from the government as soon as possible.
The transport chief said today the government's goal is to ensure the project is completed as soon as possible.
As to the responsibility, the legal rights, legal obligations relating to any cost overrun, and now these rights and obligations have to be determined according to the provisions of the entrustment agreement signed between the government and the MTR Corporation several years ago.
He said co-location arrangements involve legal and constitutional issues, but stressed the government will try to nut out the details with mainland officials. Diane To, TVB News.
Elsewhere, experts in the United States say telltale signs from the Virgin Galactic crash scene indicate that the space rocket broke up in mid-flight. A large-scale investigation is now underway to determine what went wrong and if the space industry can be salvaged. Here's Sonia Artero.
Wreckage scattered for kilometers across the Mojave Desert indicates the likelihood of an in-flight breakup. That was the official word from the National Transportation Safety Board, which has just begun piecing together what went wrong in their first ever spaceship investigation. The test pilot killed when the Virgin Galactic spacecraft exploded was 39-year-old Michael Alsbury. The California resident is now the first person to die during a commercial spaceflight. The surviving pilot, who parachuted out of Spaceship Two, is 43-year-old Peter Seibold. He's still in the hospital suffering with moderate to major injuries. There is word that the testing of a new engine and fuel mixture could be the culprit. Virgin Galactic's founder refused to speculate, but hopes his dream of commercial space travel isn't altogether scrapped.
I'm afraid in the crash investigations in the States, the NTSB make it absolutely clear one can't even speculate on what the cause is. Obviously, we're hopeful that it'll be something that can be fixed.
There are clear pictures showing Spaceship Two breaking apart in midair shortly after being released from its mothership. The future of commercial space tourism now lies